Good afternoon to you all. Welcome to our next session, how to go from robot bashing to the robot loving for the end consumer. As you know, major innovations in the agricultural world have a significant impact on the beliefs of end consumers. In order to avoid making the same mistakes and the possible societal debates that could lead to the robot bashing, it is crucial to involve the entire value chain, from the design phase to its use for the benefit of the consumer. Therefore, it is quite relevant to wonder, well, should robotics be part of a marketing strategy for an agribusinesses? What would be the levers of robots on the environment, social and food quality? How can robotics be integrated in a relevant and sustainable way within food production? What are the roles to be played by each of the stakeholders to contribute to the valorization of agri-food products in terms of information? And lastly, how can robotics provide the right traceability needed? This roundtable will be an opportunity for the speakers to share ideas, to understand together the place and the contribution of robotics in the production of quality agro-food goods. So let me introduce you to the panelists this afternoon. We have Daniel Azevedo. He's a Director Commodities, Trade and Technology at COPA COGECA, an agricultural lobby representing almost 70 national farm organizations and co-ops in Europe. Monsieur Azevedo believes in the importance of innovation and new technologies for the co-op and the European producers. He will explain why in a moment. We are delighted also to have Christophe BONNO with us. He is Director of Agricultural Institutional Relations at Groupement Les Mousquetaires. Mr. BONNO is a food engineer, Director of the entire industrial activity of the Groupement des Mousquetaires in 2010, and Director of Agricultural Institutional Relations in 2019. He's also in charge of developing the strategy of rapprochement and support with the agricultural world. Monsieur BONNO will explain to us why he thinks that robot bashing is not really a problem. We'll hear that in a moment. Ole GREEN is with us too. Is founder and CEO of Agrointelli, a Danish agricultural robotics company. Mr. GREEN has 20 years of experience in developing and implementing automation and robotic technologies for sustainable intensification of plant production, intelligent weed management, and integration of sensor technology on agricultural machinery for improved decision support system. He will, of course, present his robo manufacturer's vision in a moment. And lastly, Antoine POUPART is Marketing Strategy and Innovation Director at Bioline by InVivo, which is a national union of agricultural COP. Bioline is part of InVivo, and Bioline assists farmers all along the whole chain value: buying, planting, feeding, piloting, protecting, and enhancing. Monsieur POUPART thinks that we need to sell robotics to the final consumer user, and he'll explain why in a moment. My first question to you all, we'll have an hour discussion, 50-minute hour discussion, and then Q&A session for like 20 minutes. But my first question to you all, gentlemen. What are, according to you, the real impacts of robots on the environment, social and food quality? Monsieur Azevedo, Daniel Azevedo, you say agriculture is already innovative and very attractive for the young generations. So the question is, where can robot help? We know that there are numerous tasks that need to be accomplished on the farm, but which ones with a robot, for example? Monsieur Azevedo, Daniel Azevedo?
Thank you. Yes. First of all, thank you for this fantastic opportunity to have a dialogue with all of you. Agriculture is technologically very developed. It's very interesting to work. There are a few technologies that are entering our business, from biotechnology, satellite, automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, drones. So it is an exciting period, and robotics is already part of the experience of European farmers and cooperatives. We already use them, already have the experience, and I think most people will be surprised how agriculture is using technology. Now, I think this comes together in two ways. The first one is European farmers are now asked to get more money from the market, to get a higher return from the market. At the same time, they need to deliver more in terms of the EU framework. Robotics could be very important together with all the technologies in order to help not only to deliver a new framework, higher sustainability, but also to increase their competitiveness in the world market. We compete in the world market. The EU product is renowned by its sustainability and for its quality, and it's fundamental that we keep this competitiveness vis-à-vis our trading partners, but at the same time, we have the tools that are cost-effective, that are affordable, in order to deliver on environment, on climate change, etc.
Ole GREEN, I'm turning to you now. Can we have your manufacturer's vision? What criticisms do you usually face?
Well, there's no doubt that when introducing a new technology, the robustness is one of the key factors that we have been met with. Are we as robust as the tractors they have known for 40, 50, 60 years? Are they reliable to do the work? Because the farmers know that the work has to be done within few days, few hours when the conditions are good. And that's where the basic of the new technology has to be reliable before this is something that really will have a big impact on the market from an application point of view.
Mm-hmm. Antoine, POUPART, what according to you is the perceived value to the end consumer of using robots in a field? What is your vision?
Yeah, but yes, well, to be a bit provocative, I would say that in itself, the use of robots is of no interest for the end consumer. The question to
Can
be
you
asked
get
is
closer
whether,
to your computer?
Pardon me?
Can you get closer to your computer? Yes.
So the question to be asked is whether are robots an efficient way to meet the end consumer expectation? So this expectation are not about robots rather than tractors, insects rather than pesticides, square fields rather than circular fields. The expectations are about the results, what in my plate, what in my environment, what in my society, not about the means of production. So my answer would rather be another question: which of the end consumer expectation can be met by robots?
Ole GREEN, you were raising your hand, and then we'll hear Christophe BONNO. Go ahead.
No, I think it's quite interesting, and I would say up until a year ago, I would agree in this, but actually I've been in a number of dialogues with also consumers when we're looking into vegetable production and berry production today, when facing a fact that we have a COVID-19 situation all around the globe, where we suddenly have a society looking much more into hygiene factors, so that the fact that you could actually start harvesting your crops without actually having any or minimizing your pollution risks, that could be an element where automation could really also start supporting our hygienial factor in our high-value crop farming.
Mm-hmm. Christophe BONNO, according to your perspective, what should be done, therefore, to avoid robot bashing? What actions should be taken at the level of consumer information, and how to inform?
I think that robot bashing is not really a problem. It's an opportunity. Why? Because robots and the new technologies are going to make the job more attractive and less physically demanding. It's important to explain how robots can provide safety, confidence, transparency, and more traceability to answer the consumer's trends. It's a new opportunity to build up confidence with the consumer. We want to develop green agriculture by reducing the use of chemical and the carbon footprint for crops treatment. We also want to ensure ground fertility with a better water management and more biodiversity. This communication must be our #1 priority.
A question maybe to you all. Therefore, how can the downstream chain, processors, supermarkets, and consumers be made to promote the development of agricultural robotics?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The consumer trusts the farmer, but not his practices. We want to work. Yes, we want to work on building that trust. And with the robots and new technologies, we will be able to match treatment to crops with soil composition, optimize climate exposure, and preserve local fauna and flora. We will be able to develop artificial intelligence, which uses computer programs to analyze data. We don't know yet all the opportunities that robots and the new technology can bring to agroecology and livestock farming welfare. Data will allow total control of traceability and provide critical information to consumers. In doing so, we should be able to earn the consumer's trust with all this information bring by the new technologies.
Mm-hmm. Daniel Azevedo, you said that the farmer has to remain the center of the decision in his farm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I would say that because in the end, the farmer will not be replaced by the technology. It's up to the farmer to decide which technology he's going to use, and in order to obtain not only the consumer confidence, but also to deliver what is asked through, for example, the EU framework, or also to remain competitive vis-a-vis his colleagues in international trade. It is important also that the society itself addresses an interesting question: is why do we accept the use of high-tech technologies in all aspects of our life? But when it comes to agriculture, usually they raise many concerns over safe technologies that are being used and considered safe and have proven around the world. And I think this is an important way, and robotics has to prove that can deliver. That can make a business. It will be quite interesting, actually, to bring young and new talent to farming. If they show that there is a particular good career, I think this will be one way forward. And then how can robotics actually help in the farm? I think some of these have been already mentioned. The first one is, for example, to provide an interesting career. The second is to organize the work of a farmer. And we have seen examples how dairy robots are actually helping families to have a breakfast together in the morning, because the work is now more structured and organized. And also it would provide alternative tools, for example, for the use of low-risk substances, where you can deliver this in the fields without helping us to reduce the use of other substances that will be requested. So there is a lot to do and robotics can help.
Ole GREEN, what is your responsibility as a manufacturer to promote a positive image?
Yeah, of course, we have a huge responsibility. And I think that's really where the honesty of us as the new players on the market has to be true and valid. Because if we are overselling the technology, we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot, because if the farmers and the consumers won't have the same experiences as we are trying to sell it. So I think the real honesty in this sales and marketing effort that all of us as robotic manufacturers are doing today is quite essential, because I think also as a comment right now we have in the chat that one of the very key parameters here, I think, is uniform repetitive working conditions. This is actually, as Danielle is also mentioning, we need to make it very attractive to becoming a worker on the farmland. And I think that's really one of the core things that we can bring with robotics and automation. We can remove this uniform repetitive working condition. I think that's really crucial, because that's what we've seen over other industries over the last 2-3 decades as a key trend.
Christophe, BONNO, in terms of responsibility, you say that transparency of the products is very essential. Can you develop?
Yes, Antoine said people want the result, and the consumer want a lot of traceability. Consumer today want to buy product with more value. They search more and more value when they buy product. And with the new technology, we are be able to collect a lot of data, and we are able to give, to propose to the consumer this data. The first is the origin product, origin raw material. The second is which practices in the culture, how many carbon footprint for to produce this product. The biodiversity, the welfare farming. There are a lot of information collected very automatically with the new technology, and we propose to the consumer to make the preference. It's for us very important. It's what the consumer wants today.
Antoine, POUPART, could you tell us what, according to you, is the real interest of robots and automation technologies for a more, let's say, environmentally friendly agriculture and livestock farming? Shouldn't we first answer the question, what does the consumer want today?
Yes, exactly. And I will refer and completely agree with what Christophe just said. In my opinion, regarding the studies, the market studies we have in the hand today, the valuable, and this is really important, the valuable and consumer expectation. So the expectation is ready to buy more expensive or more market share. So we really focus on those valuable expectations and not, we don't run after all the expectation we can find, but only the valuable one. So those one are mainly around the three pillars, the food quality, which is mainly about safety and nutritional quality. A second pillar about environmental impact, and mainly about climate change and biodiversity, as Christophe just said. And the third pillar, which is really increasing, especially on the French market, related to the farmers' well-being, regarding the fair revenue and the quality of life at work. So those three pillars are the main pillars of valuable end consumer expectation that we have to really focus on, and robots have to give answer to those expectations.
Ole GREEN, I see you agreeing with what Antoine is just saying.
For sure, I really think this is very important to, as a common business, as a branch, that we uniform our replies here, because I think we have huge impact on some of the very basic SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that we can do something about our land, we can do something about our water, we could do something about work conditions. And I think this is really what is also important, that we help as a supporting business to farmers, to help society to show that we can actually do something. We can take an action stand here and show that we can improve the conditions on the farm for better working conditions, as well as supporting with a more sustainable farming practice. I think this is important, that we don't make it to something big and theoretical, but having something very concrete and specific whenever we are sitting in the family dinner and are having the opportunity to explain our neighbor the same thing.
Daniel, can I have your point of view on that question?
Obviously, I agree with what he said. The farmers of today have very little tools to provide information to the consumer, and we hope that the data that will be collected not only by robotics but also the technologies will actually enable us to provide further information to the consumer, but also extremely important to get information from the consumer so that we can use it in our farms and adapt our practices accordingly. And that will lead to a very important question, which is what to do with the data and how to share this data that will be collected by robots, but not only. And in that case, we are following very attentively the Commission proposals on data governance, and we have put forward a code of conduct on agriculture data sharing, establishing principles for sharing of data with our partners in the agri-food chain, but also with third parties. And then the last point I would make is It is, yeah, we agree that the robotics can help us to deliver on more efficiency. That will also allow us to deliver more on environment, and will also help us to deliver on working conditions. Now, the question is, how are we going to enable European farmers and cooperatives to invest in these technologies that will allow us to deliver not only in our own goals to be profitable, but also what the society is asking us to do further?
We'll get back to that question, and I want to get back to the question of what we do with the data we collect. But turning to Christophe, BONNO, because you are, to go more into details, you argue that the consumer trusts the farmer, but not his practices. Your responsibility, therefore, is to work on building that trust. So how do you do that?
Yes, we are. You are agree with the discussion. Today, the consumers are choosing the product according to personal preferences. Robotics is helping us to develop a new application inside, connected to a database which collects all data needed by the consumers. For example, product origin, friendly farmer practice. The most difficult is to choose the good data, data which interest by the consumer. This is precisely what we are currently working on, using robot and the new technology, and develop the best application to give the personal preferences to the consumer.
How to choose the right data, we'll get back to that too. But Antoine POUPART, you say that agricultural innovations have always been pushed by technological innovations, and that's precisely what we have to avoid with robotics, because you think that we need to sell the robotics to the final consumers before the farmers. Can you develop on that question?
Yeah, this is the key point for me. The evolution of agricultural production methods, rather than keeping being driven by technological and technical innovation, must now, in my opinion, to create value for farmers, which is the main subject for us as a national union of agricultural cooperatives, be based on their ability to give meaning to food and to correspond to the benefits expected by the end consumer. To be more precise and more specific, let's say that the segmentation and the differentiation to meet end consumer expectation create nowadays, in our opinion, more value per hectare than simply farming productivity. If I just give you one example of this trade-off, is the example of seeds variety, seeds breed. When we run field trials to choose the new seeds breeds that we are going to market, we used to be very happy when we find a variety with simply 0.1 ton per hectare of added productivity. If I speak about wheat, the wheat today costs 200 euros per ton. So we speak about a gain of 20 euros per hectare with the productivity of a new variety. If I change my mind, and I prefer to look at differentiation and segmentation, as Christophe told, to meet a real expectation with value for the consumer, I will probably prefer a less productive seed breed, less productive because on the other end, this variety will be more resistant and we will need less use of pesticides, for example. So a true example would be to say I would prefer a variety with a yield decreased by 0.5 ton per hectare. But those tons of wheat will be valued in specific chain food 20 euro per ton more than the normal standard. So on one hand, I will lose 100 euro per hectare of productivity, but I will earn 150 euros per hectare with the differentiation and the segmentation. So at the end, it's again a net a net profit of 50 euro per hectare. So if I go back to my productivity example, 20 euro per hectare of gain with a logic of productivity, 50 euro per hectare with another logic of segmentation and differentiation. Those figures are the real figures today in our market. So the new paradigm we are running, in a nutshell, is now farming for consumer, so robotic for end consumers, rather than farming by purchaser or farming by robotics.
Who wants to react to what Antoine just developed? Ole GREEN, maybe?
Well, no, I think that there's a lot of very good points in that, and I think, I think it's hard from our perspectives as the robotics at this, because this interaction is essential, and as well with also seeing how the data need, which Christophe was mentioning before. I think this whole trust, I think, is one of the big challenges we have right now. So I really see this on how we generate this trust throughout the whole system, in not overdoing what we're trying to offer.
Well, if I rephrase all this, Ole GREEN, I'm turning to you. Do robotic actors only care about farmers, or do they also take consumers' concerns into account?
Well, it's a hard one to talk for everybody, but looking at the examples that is being used by a number of manufacturers today, we are seeing how value created by the robots can help in supporting our business chain. So I believe that there are elements where we can generate a larger degree of traceability in an automated way, and I think that is where we have an obligation to look at how is it that we can ensure the quality of whatever we do. If that is collecting data at the same time as performing a task in the field, that is where, again, the reliability and the trust in the system is a need to have. But there's no doubt when we're looking at this, we are a supporting actor to the farmer. And as with one of the questions in the Q&A right now, who owns this whole security of the data? We are a subcontractor, basically, to the farmer. So that means all the data has to be approved and forwarded only by the acceptance by the farmer. So I think we can look at how the farmer can use the data, and we can make sure we can present it in something that is easily to make as a commodity. But we shouldn't go past the farmer.
We'll get back to that question of data, because there's a couple of different issues on that, and we'll get back to the chat in a couple of minutes. But I have more questions for you guys. Christophe, BONNO, you have to explain yourself, because you say overall that robot bashing is not really a problem. Can you explain why?
Because new technology are the only way to go to green farming and improve animal welfare. It's very important. It will eliminate difficult job to attract new skill and promote the transferring of farm. Very big problem, the transferring of farm between generation. And robot, it's also a solution to readings, Antoine said, reduce farming cost and increase farmers' margin. It's very important too. It's why it's not about, there not exist robot bashing. It's robot loving for consumer and farmers.
Daniel, looking upon the future of farming now, when we prepared this session, you mentioned something quite important. You say that, and I quote you, we have to pay attention to the governance, to data collect, the way we do it, and to the principle of sharing data. We have to secure our values. Can you develop on that question?
Yes, of course. So the farmer is in a situation where he is making the investments in terms of buying the technology or buying the robots, and he will be the one collecting the data. And it is important from our point of view, and that's what we agree also with our partners in the agri-food chain, as mentioned already by Ole, the data that is collected during the farm operations or in the farm, it should belong to the farmer. He should be the one controlling the access to the data, and it is also to ensure that he also gets a share of the value that is created by the sharing of the data. And like this, he will be able to have some return for the data. Of course, there is data that has to be shared, and we need to promote, because we see the value of sharing data, providing we in Europe, we have the best traceability system in the world. Sharing the data and using some of the new technologies will help us to improve that the excellent system we already have. But we need to make sure that the farmer is not the only one taking risks, making the investments, but that he is also supported in order to create this value. And then the data should come back to the farmer as well, because he will need data from our partners, from the consumer, in order to improve the way he does, or to adapt the way he does the farming.
Others, what is your point of view on that? Or how to choose the right data, and what to do with the data that has been collected? Ole GREEN?
I think that's a big challenge in actually sorting out what is data and what is information. So we know that from one of our standard robots today, we can generate between 0.5 terabyte up to 2-3 terabytes per day per field where the robot is working in during one workday. That's a huge amount of data, and not even a 4G or 5G will help us transmit all these data. So we really need to have a thorough insight into how do we make this informative for both the farmers and the end consumer. And that's really where, if we mount a camera, we can generate a lot of data, and that's a lot of ones and zeros that we're transmitting. But I think this is really something where we need to look at the whole business chain. And that's why I think the dialogue today is of a high relevance, because this is what we need to start adding the value to the whole food chain, so that we know what is actually requested in the other end. But it's like asking, what can you use a 5G network to? It's like if you were used to sending SMS text messages, you didn't know you could send a picture. So we also need to help the consumers actually looking at the possibilities here. What is actually possible now?
And I would add
Antoine,
that.
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I would add that the sharing of the data will be the one who will be adding the value, but then we will need the proper tools. And we see, for example, artificial intelligence as a complementary technology that will help us to process all these quantity of data and provide decision-making support to the farmer, but also to transform the data that the robot is working on the farm, but the conditions are not uniform or not predetermined. The robot will have to act and change his course according to conditions he finds in the terrain. And artificial intelligence may be one of those solutions to help the robot to navigate through this a very distinct field.
Antoine or Christophe, your point of view on that issue of data collecting?
It's a difficult question, because there are a lot of data. And when you ask our marketing teams what we can do with all the collect of data, the first answer is the carbon footprint, to propose to the consumer on pack on the product the environmental scale. That yes. is not ready today to have in France a general scale of carbon footprint on product. It's a new project. There are some study on that, but I think it's the first answer to the consumer's trend. Give the carbon footprint on pack of the product.
And we have specific question on the chat about this. We'll get back to you, Christophe, later. Antoine, do you want to add something, Antoine Poupart, about that issue of...
I think that robots can be a very good solution to one of the main pain points today for a farmer, which is data collection for the CAP, for the commercial contracts, for any other sort of survey. So this is a real pain point, which also affect the quality of the data. Because it is a pain point, the quality is not as good as should be, the data collected on the farms. So any solution that can drive the data collection automatic and less simpler and less easy for farmers will be a real improvement of our ability to bring a good information proved to the end consumer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Ole GREEN, I see you agreeing with what Antoine Poupart is saying now.
Yes, for sure. And I think what is really important here is also that we look at data is not just data. We have access to so many things. So I think also compared to what Daniel mentioned before in the use of AI and so on, I think alone being able to really document site specifically, today we sprayed, yesterday we fertilized, that you have this automatic documentation of simple things as operation and timings, weather conditions for the actual operation performance. I think these are very simplified data. And often we see in a lot of these European research projects on, it gets very high level and advanced. And I think we have so many gains that we can offer the society from this data, which is much more simple, which is really basically also like the carbon footprint. What is my energy consumption per area unit? That's a simple data which we can actually add value to today. We can have it certified. We can really show this is something documentable by each local farmer.
Daniel, AZEVEDO, what is the importance of innovation and new technologies for the co-op and the European producers? Do you have the necessary tools to achieve Green Deal and PAC goal?
So cooperatives, agri-cooperatives, they play a very important role. Agri-cooperatives, they are run by farmers, so they help farmers to achieve size. They help farmers to invest. They provide training capacities to their members, so they play a very important role. They also, on the data question, they are quite important because they can actually trace back where the data is going and support the farmers to achieve better deals with some input suppliers, for example. So they are extremely important actor in this regard. And secondly, do we have the right tools? We need to be able to invest in the right tools, and we need to have access to the right tools. There are a lot of safe technologies that are not available for the European market, and we cannot compete at the same level as other farmers around the world. And I think that will be the most important in a moment where, as you mentioned, we have been asked to do more, and we can do more, we can deliver more on sustainability. Where the public money available for farming is decreasing, we need to get more additional money from the market. Therefore, it is important we have access to safe technologies, as long as they are safe, of course.
Of course. There's already a lot of questions on the chat, so we'll open the Q&A questions in a session in a couple of minutes. But Antoine, just looking upon the future, can you tell us on your marketing process, what do you look upon today?
Yes, within our cooperative, we decided to completely change our marketing approach, and we now completely designed our process of design, referencing, and promotion of ag inputs, ag tools, or ag services that we market. We now score them and choose them regarding the intrinsic benefits of these inputs and services for the end consumer, because it reflects their ability to allow farmers to access to the best market and the best valued market for them. So now, if I come back to my example of a seed variety, seed breed, we not anymore only say this seed has a better productivity of X%, but we also say this variety, this breed is adapted to allow you farmers to go to this specific market, which is valued something like 10% better than the common market. So we promote the solution, the ag solution. We promote them regarding their ability to allow a farmer to choose the best market to get the best margin on his farm.
I have maybe one last question to you all, and then we'll open the chat because there's a lot of questions. But what is the usefulness for the well-being of farmers and breeders and the management of labor shortages? Any one of you?
If I may start as representing the farmers, I think it has been already mentioned. One of the key questions is very often our farmers and cooperatives, they can't find enough labor in order to help to deliver on certain of the tasks. Some of the tasks are very repetitive, they are monotonous, and they only take place sometimes harvest where you really need a lot of workforce. It takes in a very few period, and you need to bring labor from outside. So robotics could help to deliver on certain of these areas. It could also improve some of the safety, because some of the tasks as a farmer, it's a very difficult profession and it's very heavy. Some of the tasks are extremely heavy, and you work from the morning until the dawn. You never stop. You don't have vacations, etc. So having the capacity to program your work, it will be very important for a farmer, for their families in particular, and also hopefully, this will also help to bring a new generation, a new talent that will see farming as high tech that is in the 21st century, and not coming back to the methods of the inefficient methods of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, where a lot of people dream of farming as sustainable. And I have reasons to believe that knowing more about what we are doing today, having the data, having access to the best technology available, like for every other economical sector, is the way forward to sustainability, is the way forward to profitability, competitiveness, and for exciting rural areas, because everyone talks about keeping people in rural areas, but we need actually to enable them to live there. Accessing to broadband infrastructure is crucial.
Ole GREEN, you couldn't agree more.
No, I think that there's really some very good points there, Daniel. And I think the uniformity of work tasks today keeps a lot of young people away from farming. So the point of not only being a tractor driver, but being a robotic operator, where you are servicing robots, you are maintaining them, you are programming them, that gives suddenly new possibilities for us when we are recruiting people to work on farms. So I think that element in itself is very important. But I also think one of the parameters which we haven't touched so much upon until now is also the quality of work performed by the farmer. If you have seasonal workers that comes in and you need to change them every 2-3 years, you need to retrain, you need to have experience built up in the new workers. So the uniformity of the uniformity and the quality of the work being performed is a very high commercial value also by the farmer, because that makes it much easier to make a uniform quality of the sellable product. So it's all the way through these procedures that this adds value, and I think this is the importance that we need to bring forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you agree, gentlemen, I think we're going to open the Q&A session a little bit earlier than it was planned previously, because we have a lot of interesting questions. First one, how do you see the security of all the collected data and the usage of the robots, which can create a strong dependence of the farmer? Who wants to answer that? Ole GREEN, yes.
I think no matter if we're talking robots, sensors on seeders or tractors and other equipment. I think what we need as manufacturing industry to really underline again and again and again is that the data acquired in the field belongs to the farmers. The whole discussion that we've seen throughout Europe in relation to GDPR just underlined that we have a mistrust in how data can be used. And this is really where we have a responsibility as machine offering companies that this has not been misused, that this is the farmer that has to decide who gets access and who can utilize this data. And then it's down to whomever is offering a farm management system or data collecting system. This is like we need to have trust in the same way as if we're choosing our own bank.
Just related to that first question, unless somebody wants to add something to that first question, but the second one is related. How can robot manufacturer readdress the fears of loss of traditional agricultural jobs? And this person says, I think that would help to deal with the social acceptance also from a very conservative sector such as agriculture. Ole or Daniel wants to answer?
I might say our experience is that robotics is not replacing jobs, it's replacing tasks, monotonous tasks. Not every job will disappear. For example, you can see today that legal assistants are disappearing because their job is being replaced, is being automatized. But a janitor or a worker in a farm that needs to do different types of tasks, going up, etc., it needs to be multifunctional. He doesn't have his job in danger because the robot is not able to do these different tasks. So what is important to us is that they will deliver value, because they will also create other types of jobs. Because if you have a robot, then you need a machinery assistant. If you are actually able to get some money from your profession, you will be able to employ other people and you will be able to expand your activity. So I think the conversation needs to go in the direction. What kind of tasks could be automatized, and how can we create value to make sure that the business keeps profitable, that keeps able to deliver, to pay the taxes, to bring the jobs into rural areas, etc. That will be the important conversation.
Can you all or each of you comment on the considerations in ethics of automation and artificial intelligence in agribusiness? Will there be no more farmers, only mechanics? That's a question that comes along very often. So will there be no farmers, only mechanics? Thank you for your thoughts, all of you. Ole?
Yeah, I really believe that what robotics and automation is enabling is time to be spent on agronomy. So the trained farmer does not have to spend time in going up and down the field performing the uniform task, but that is actually to have the time to look at the soil, to look at the plant, look at the weeds. That I think is very essential. Though we see a lot of new things, new possibilities with all the data collected, we don't have the AI systems that today can transform it into decision support systems in an automated way today. What the robots can do today is they can help perform uniform tasks, but you still need the farmer to look at the soil, to look at the crop. And there's a lot of that, which I believe this is actually where this makes the work much more relevant for a trained farmer, because you can concentrate on the agronomy and don't have to spend hours and hours driving up and down the field performing the same task when you decided now's the time to seed, now's the time to spray, or now's the time to weed.
Antoine, maybe what are your thoughts on that?
I will answer especially on the word used of ethic. I think this is exactly an ethic point to avoid farmer with robotic some very painful task, or to help them to spend more time to run other tasks just for free, because they have no time free at all for most of them today. So I think this question of ethic and of farmer well-being is a really important point to promote robotics on the farm.
Christophe, BONNO, maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, because we also spoke about jobs, agricultural jobs, but I think it's the same in the whole Europe. We have a big lack of candidates for the jobs on our farms. So the point is not to destroy jobs. We already don't manage to fill those jobs with candidates because of the pain of a certain task. So robots can be robotics, and all automation solution can also be a solution to make our agricultural jobs more attractive for new candidates.
Mm-hmm. Christophe, BONNO, maybe you want to add something? I know that the ethics is one key element that you take into consideration.
Yes. Just to say the same things, it would be find people. It's a very difficult. It's a big problem in agriculture and in food industry too, and it will be easier to attract new recruits, flying drone, or driving make automatic robots, or deploying high-tech solution, big data, satellite, climatology, agronomy, etc. It's very exciting and interesting skill, but it's a big challenge to find a good skill in this new technology.
Mm-hmm. To go more into details, an interesting question. What are your thoughts on the issue that only big farmers are able to buy robots and push small farmers out of the market?
I would mention cooperatives as one good example that can support farmers to access these new technologies and robotics. And then it's not a cost, it's a matter of how cost effective is the robot. A farmer will make the necessary investment if it delivers a value. And that should be the perspective. And of course, more and more we are working also with contractors that are providing assistance to farmers that can make the necessary investments on the net technology, maintenance of the machines, and those are free options that are available to support also small farmers on access to the technology. I think one clear example is the work that's been done by Gaia, for example, in Greece, but we also have other cooperatives in France that are supporting their farmers on accessing to new technologies.
Ole GREEN?
I definitely believe that the robots will enable it actually to be possible for smaller farmers to much easily be competitive in the future. Because what could, for a small farm, be a big cost in hiring in a seasonal worker to help them in the middle of the season, that's where they are very relying on getting good workforce in at that specific time of the year. And with alternatively looking at the big tractors and the implements today, which would be the alternative where the big companies are investing, I believe really that the robotics can be a very good example of it. And I think the NIO-OS robot, which has been implemented on smaller farms down to 20 hectares as a weeding robot, is a brilliant example that it doesn't have to be big to be cost efficient. And I think that's a lot of the robots solution we see today has that opportunity.
Daniel, you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with Ole, because today you already have a lot of robots in farms, and it's not necessarily has to be the major farmers, but also there are small farmers using it, like feeding robots or even cleaning robots. Now the question is also how we enable the small and medium-sized farmers to do it. So in this case, we also need investment, for example, from the EU policy framework. We need investment on broadband so that farmers can actually share the data that is provided. We need access in terms of infrastructure for transport, for etc. These are all we need. For example, the social funds to support training and advisory. So there are a lot of EU policies that will actually level the playing field to make sure that the farmers can actually choose the best technology that fits their needs. It doesn't have necessarily to be a robot, doesn't have to be a drone, doesn't have to be this technology. It needs to choose according to the market. But the EU policies and the national policies, they need to enable this investment from the farmers. And that's their key role.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yes, in France, we are our BlaBlaCar agriculture. The name is CUMA. Maybe Antoine explain that.
Antoine, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm not a specialist.
And I don't know if it is specific to French regulation, but we have a special type of cooperatives called CUMA, C-U-M-A, that are cooperatives, very small cooperatives dedicated to buying big material, big like seed planters or so on, within a group of 5 to 20 farmers. So this model of a small cooperative dedicated to material could be exactly the good solution to allow any kind of farmer to access to robots.
So CUMA, that's the name.
Yeah, C-U-M-A, which in French is Coopérative d'utilisation de matériel agricole.
And what's the website? Where can we reach them?
You can find them. They are related to the national syndicates of cooperatives called La Coopération Agricole, which is a member of COPA COGECA.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the information, Antoine. Thank you for raising the question, Christophe. Let's move to another question. Are there any open source and commercial available? What? Ole, you wanted to add something? Sorry.
Yes, I think. Yeah, no worries. I think a very important element also when we are looking at this, the standard way of getting new technologies to a farm is that you purchase it or you go into a cooperative and do it. I believe that the as a service element will be raised to a much larger extent. We are seeing this in a lot of other industries that you actually don't have to purchase your equipment, but you can hire or pay per use. And I truly believe that would be a big enabler also for the robotics. And I know we are already having great success with having that kind of dialogue with farmers, that instead of buying the robot, you can actually, in certain regions, pay per use. So you buy it per area unit for performing a specific task. And I think this is something we've seen in other industries. Well known is the copy machine, that we pay for per copy, we don't invest in the machine. And I think this is something that would enable small as well as big farmers the new technology.
Speaking of which, are there any open source and commercial available realistic simulation platforms to evaluate robustness? Is there such a platform existing today?
I would say that I know of that there is a couple of EU Horizon 2020 projects today working on these cyber-physical systems, which also has modeling tools and test tools. It is very much used within the automotive industry today, and I have seen very few examples within the agricultural robotic industry. But knowing that this exists in automotive, and it is also something we have studied ourselves, because it is something that speeds up the development process within the automotive industry today. But very few research institutes are still promoting this within the agricultural domain. So one thing is that I could advertise and say we're doing so and we're doing so, but we need the third party stamp to make sure that this is also something that the farmer can use as a trustworthy test.
Also, next question is, are there currently any project in France to build centralized database of labeled data? That you know of? Antoine, you're thinking?
Yes, I don't know if it's the good answer regarding the question of labeled data, but you have two main initiatives in France to organize the to organize the transfer of agricultural and food data between different operators, which is called Numalim for the food. But Christophe, I think, have more information about Numalim than I have, and the exact complement regarding agricultural data, which is called Numagri. So Numagri and Numalim are two main, let's say, platform to try to find a good way of governance of data of agricultural data on one hand, and for food data on the other hand.
Christophe, do you want to elaborate a bit more on Numalim information?
Not more. We are just going to beginning this project.
Okay.
We just work today to define which of data we need and make priority on this data.
Okay, it's only starting, so next year you can develop more.
Yes.
That's for sure. Okay, I'm reading the question as they, oh, all right, we got this. I'm reading the questions as they come up. So the next one is, given the high variability in agriculture environment, generalization capability of artificial intelligence models can be mentioned as a key aspect to consider. Who wants to address this?
I'm not sure I completely understood the question.
I will read it again. Given the high variability in agriculture environment, generalization capability of artificial intelligence models can be mentioned as a key aspect to consider.
I agree. It will depend on we make that point. Agriculture is very diverse, not only in the climate, but in the terrain, but also in terms of production methods. And obviously, it will have a huge impact on the systems that you will choose. I can't foresee how it will work in 20, 30 years, but I believe that computer power probably will enable to use these systems very widely. But absolutely, the variety of agricultural production will have an impact on deployment, not only of artificial intelligence, but other technologies such as robotics, drones, or even nanotechnology. We are not talking about it, but they should be coming to the market in what, 10, 15 years.
The next question is about some issue we haven't raised so far in this roundtable. Isn't the construction of complex robots with materials that are sometimes criticized, such as being rare metals, anti-ethical to a more ecological agriculture? Ole GREEN, maybe?
Yes, that is really a major issue that we need to look at the complete sustainability. So that is where the impact evaluation of the technology we are offering. And that's often where we are looking at what is the most sustainable solution. If we're looking at a tractor built today, it's an extremely efficient construction with use of very few rare minerals compared to a lot of the new technologies. We see this within automotive, that electrical cars are being compared to diesel cars. So we see a lot of this criticism going back and forth between technologies. So I think the most important here is the awareness that if we are spending it, and I think it's important that we should use these rare metals, but we have an obligation as machine manufacturers to ensure that we can also support the business in reusing and recirculating these materials. Because for sure, we should use the technologies, but our obligation is also to ensure that it's not being wasted. If a machine is being worn down, we need to have methods to ensure that we can ensure these minerals for future use.
Mm-hmm. Who wants to add something on that question? Daniel, maybe?
It depends. Very often the issue with sustainability or environmental impact has to do with the compared to what? To the previous method, or with alternative solutions, or with objective that you want. Robots, for example, they could easily, hopefully in the future, replace, for example, weed killers, if they will be able to remove the weeds mechanically from a farm. That could help in one way to improve environmental impact in terms of use of substances, or, for example, the use of drones in remote areas or with big slopes. Actually, with the deployment of low-risk substances, you can actually avoid the leakage in those areas. But it will always depend with what are the other alternatives, and compare with what could be done differently. But we need to always take into account that we are very limited by the objectives that are put by farmers, reduction targets, etc. That all of that will have an influence on how we can deliver. It is a very tricky question.
It is, yes, indeed. Another very concrete question: how to ensure that farmers will master robots and autonomous solutions? The risk is that advanced algorithms eventually reduce creativity and learning by trial and error. Education and training might help. What do you think?
I can guarantee, if a robot will deliver and do what the farmer needs, he will learn immediately how to use it. I can tell you, I've seen farmers that never care about technology with mobiles and iPads in their hands because it delivers what they needed, and they are curious. Now, obviously, they need to have access to training and digital skills, and also the areas where they live. So all the labor force that will work, that will use these systems, they need to be trained. Our educational systems need to be ready. And I think this will be the key point.
Mm-hmm. And who's the training responsibility?
I believe today, if we are offering as a manufacturer and a seller to the farmer, we have an obligation to ensure that the farmer actually needs the right training to utilize the technology in the right way. So for sure, we have an obligation, because I don't know of anywhere in Europe where you have a robotic, an agricultural robotic operator education. So this is something we need to help them. But it's no different than selling auto steering or a sprayer controller computer today. There is a request by the farmer to use the technology in the right way, and that's where the training and the usability comes in. And no doubt the competition within the robotic manufacturers today is not only the physical design or the way it's constructed or the robustness there, it is also the usability. So is the user interface easy to address by someone who haven't seen this before? So this is, of course, also a competitive parameter for the robotic manufacturers.
So you can develop more on that question, Ole GREEN. Many farmers are quite good in tractor mechanics. Robotics implies harder skills, such as electronics and coding. Don't you think they will be afraid to lose autonomy using robots?
I think it's because we are right now in a transition phase, because I believe that the farmers shouldn't be a software programmer. That is, if we are in that situation, then we're not finished developing our interface to the robot. If we look at it, whenever I've been having a workshop with farmers on all the nice things technology could offer them, basically we end up in the same question every time. They like 2 buttons, maybe only one, and that's a green button to press start, and then the robot should do what it's asked to do. All the thing with all these options that we bring them because we love technology as engineers, that's something, because we see all the possibilities, but the farmers basically want the basic work done. And if the robot does that, it's a stop and go element. And that, I think, is because we are looking at solution that is on their maturity journey to become something that is like getting into a car and start a car. You can jump into a new car and then you know by intuition how to do it. And I think this is also what we will see with the technology in agriculture.
I would like to hear Christophe and Antoine on that question. Do you think that farmers will be afraid to lose autonomy using robots?
I don't think so at all. I don't think so. This level of complexity is already at work in the tractors, sprayer, and on the common and usual material. So this degree of complexity is already in the farm. Farmers are really happy of those new tractors, those new sprayers, those new seed planters. So it's not a question, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Christophe and maybe Daniel on that?
Yes, there are a lot of benefits. Robots and new technology ensure the attractiveness of agriculture profession. It's better for the job and for the future.
Mm-hmm. Daniel?
Robotics are not going, or any other technology, they are not going to replace the farmer. It will be the farmer who makes the decisions, what he needs, what type of technology, and how he's going to deliver. We need to have in place a system to support the farmer. So this starts at our very beginning, at the educational system. We need to prepare the new generations for all the technologies that are available, to be good on science, to be good on technology. And this is not only for farming, it's for also other economic activities. You need to have a good basis since you are a kid. Then you need to have vocational training, you need to have advisory systems that provide support not only for the robotics, but how to do the data processing, how to integrate other activities. This is extremely important. And then, of course, as Ole has mentioned, the role of the manufacturers to provide the necessary specialized work or specialized training to operate a certain machine. And I cannot never forget the role of agri-cooperatives that are extremely important in providing their support to their members, farmers.
The next question you can all relate to, I think it's very relevant, and we haven't raised that issue yet. A very big issue for agriculture and farmers today is the transmission of the farms to young generation. Robots are expensive. The most expensive the material is, the harder it is to sell the farm. Isn't it a challenge for farming robots? We can already see it with milking robots. What is your point of view on that? Antoine?
I would say that the price of the soil of the fields is much more important than the price of the material to transfer a farm. So if there is a key issue, it's regarding the price of the soil, much more than the price of the material present on the farm.
Ole GREEN?
I would very much like to, sorry, I would very much like to supplement this one, because I think you won't even have the first farmer to invest in the robot if it's not cost beneficial. So if you're comparing a robot to a tractor with an operator, the first element here is that you need to have a good business case to actually have that investment being done. And that's why I think the robotics element would be easier to support the next generation to also purchase it, because if your alternative is a tractor with manpower, I fully agree. The machines in itself is not the big factor here. That's your business case per area unit. And of course, your machine investment always have to be set complementary to what are the crops and what are your yields and what are your income expectations. So if the first farmer can do it, of course, the next farmer needs to look at least making the same good business.
Daniel?
We see our young farmers, or those who want to become young farmers, their main concern is access to land and access to investment. And that's why it is very important that the EU framework enables farmers to invest, that we are able to have a return from the market, and of course that we need access to new technologies, because we can deliver more on sustainability. But if the farmer is not able to make money, he can't deliver on sustainability. He cannot make the necessary investments in order to meet those requirements. And this is it's more difficult for young farmers that are trying to join the profession. And that's where our policymakers at European level, they can make a difference.
There are two more questions. Go ahead.
I take in a farm, it's low cost, best margin and easy to transferring the farm. It's like an industry.
Two more questions for you, gentlemen. Should the modern farmer have a minimum or more knowledge of robotics in order to be autonomous for configuring operations or even fixing some technical issues?
It depends on their business model. It depends on their business model and their interest.
Ole GREEN?
I definitely don't think it should be needed to have a higher technical skill level today. I think what is really important is to show that automation, like we see it in the steel industry, that you could introduce automatic welding instead of a manual help welding. But for a lot of these companies who did that, they increased productivity with the same work staff, because you still need someone to look at the quality of the work. And I think this comes back to what we mentioned a couple of times during this session, that you can actually make the time more worth, because you can look at the agronomy, you can look at the plants, the soil, the animals. And I think that is really the big issue here, that robotics is helping you to do something that is uniform and repetitive. And if you can do that, then you can spend your time in what we're actually good at as humans, and that is look at the variability, because we are much better to look at variability than spending time in training expensive computer networks for this. Because when you look across a field, we can actually see the small differences. And that's what we're good at. And that's what we should spend the time in, visiting the spots in the field to find out why are they not yielding like we would like them to. So I think this is really important, that we really value the agronomy and the understanding of the business. And then I think the requirement to us as manufacturers is to make sure that it's a robust, reliable, and easy to use product, similar as an auto steering system or a sprayer computer.
The last question is raising the issue of renewable energy. So I'm reading it. May the numerous robots' batteries be a way to store electricity? The energy transition is coming, but the intermittence of most of renewable energies are pointed as a weakness. What do you think? Daniel and Ole?
Maybe Ole, you wanted to.
Yeah. No, I think there will be a societal requirement to us as a farming community to not spend fossil-based energy. We see bioethanol, biodiesel, hydrogen solutions, as well as the battery solutions coming into the market. And that is really where the agricultural industries, for certain operations, are more energy requiring. And that's why I think electrical robots are good at some things, but you would need high power energy density for certain other operations, like when we do tillage, we do harvesting, and there biodiesel or bioethanol might be easier to adapt. But no doubt, I think the general requirement is that we are looking towards a fossil-free farming practice. And then I think what we can benefit from the transport industry, the heavy transport industry, or the automotive industry, that can help us within the farming business to look at all of these opportunities. So I don't think there is one solution to this. I think there's numerous solutions to this.
What do you think, Daniel?
Well, as farmers, we are very used to integrate the circular economy and to integrate new sources of energy. Some of them were already mentioned, bioenergy, etc. So what we need is really reliability. Even today, many farmers around, they need to have an alternative electric system because they don't have access to a reliable source of energy. And that is costly. And it will be the same with broadband. We need to have a system that works 24 hours a day, because we have sometimes to store inputs at a certain temperature, or when we make the harvest, we need to keep all the foods at a certain temperature. And if we don't, then we lose the whole work. So this is extremely important. Access to good infrastructure, sources of energy, broadband, and reliable. We want to avoid this gap between rural areas and urban areas. Rural citizens, they should have access to the same services and rights as urban citizens.
Yes, Ole?
I've seen a number of research projects right now addressing how we can benefit from 5G. I would say if I could just ensure to have 3G all over the agricultural domain area in Europe, that would be a good starting point. So I think this is really where we see in the areas with high populations, yes, then we get all these new technologies. But in a lot of the farmland areas, we are struggling just having a connection, not a 4G or a 5G connection.
Christophe and Antoine, maybe what's your view on fossil-free farming practices so far? If you have one. Or maybe one last message before we close this session.
We agree with Ole and Daniel.
Okay, you agree with Ole and Daniel? All right. Antoine, do you have one last message, maybe?
To resume our discussion, I would say that we have to together to sell and to promote robots first to the end consumer, to allow farmer to use them free of mind, rather than only thinking about selling the robots to the farmer and whatever about the end consumer. So let's sell the robots to the end consumer, and so that the farmers will be able to use them easily.
All right, thank you. Ole and Daniel, do you have one last message before we close this session?
I think we're talking about all these opportunities that robots and sensors and so all of this gives us. I think one important thing that we've seen also in this very strange year is our reliability and workforce. We are in so huge lack of people that can drive our machines up and down the field. So I think this is the core element where robots can make a difference today. A lot of what we talked about are also future perspectives, but the robots are on the market today and they can actually make a difference today. And I think that is also setting the ambitions by the farmer to look at the easy gains right here and now, and then we will all learn together and grow it instead of expecting that one big perfect system will come. So I think this is a joint journey, and this is really where we need to benefit from what we can already today.
Daniel?
And I would say, and I would leave it to the young generations and say, agri-food sector is exciting. It employs a lot of high technology. It has a future. It has shown its resilience during the COVID-19 crisis. We have kept the food security. We kept the food coming to the plate, and we never stopped working. And so it is important that if you can talk to your decision makers, to the politicians, and make sure that they enable our investment, they enable our investment on our farms, on sustainability, and that we as farmers, we have access to the latest high-tech technology as all our trade partners. As long as they are safe, we should be able to access those technologies. And we will be able to deliver.
All right, well, that would be the word of the end. I want to thank you all, four of you.
And
yes,
Sophie,
Christophe,
for me, it's Sophie. Let's promote robots because they are a fantastic improvement to farmers' life and consumers' trust.
Right. Thank you so much for this nice message. Thank you all, gentlemen, Christophe, Daniel, Ole, Antoine, for the very relevant points you have developed in this roundtable. Thank you for this nice energy. Thank you all for your participation and the very smart questions you've raised on the chat. I will be really happy to see you back again on the second roundtable tomorrow. And in relation to what we just talked this afternoon, we'll talk about farming with no tractor driver. Is it possible? You have one night to reflect on that. Thank you so much, and have a good day, good afternoon to you all.
Thank you, Sophie.
Bye.